All right, welcome to the Podcast Marketing Magic live training webinar with me, your host, Seth Green. We are going to go ahead and get started in 5 minutes. This is Seth Green. Welcome to the Podcast Marketing Magic live training webinar. You are in the right place. We are going to go ahead and get started in just 2 minutes. I am creating a poll for you right now. Want to know where you're at? Okay, there is now a poll. I'd love it if you would vote. What's your biggest concern or challenge around podcasting? Is it guests? Is it the technology? Is it how to monetize, how to make money doing it? Is it finding the time to do it? If you could get that filled out, that will help me gauge where everybody is. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So, thank you so much for joining us here at the Podcast Marketing Magic live training webinar. We are going to go ahead and get started here, and you're going to go ahead and learn. You're about to discover, I'm going to spill our secrets and show you how to get impossible to reach decision makers to seek you out, how to write a book without writing a book, and how to get customers from iTunes for as little as $15 a month. So, have you ever wondered? So I was at the last Ian Kennedy event I was at. Well, actually, it wasn't an event. It was the videos, the marketing videos for his source code product launch. And he talked about what he called the Internet Marketing Freak Show. And what he meant by that was, for example, let's say if you're on Frank Kern's list and Frank Kern or Jeff Walker's list, and Jeff is launching a new product. He's launching product launch formula 7.0 or whatever he's up to now. You don't just get emails from Jeff selling you that product. You'll get an email from Ryan Deiss, from Frank Kern, from Mike Filsaime, from Rich Schefren, from all of the so-called internet marketing gurus saying, hey, don't buy through their link, buy through my link because I'll give you a better bonus. And I thought about that and I said, that's really amazing. because they're all promoting each other's stuff. It makes it sound like there's some conspiracy meeting where like every month they get together and go, who are we going to launch this month? Whose turn is it? Let's all email for them and make them a ton of money. And I said, how could we duplicate that in regular businesses? So you're about to discover what we figured out, that what we've done for dozens and dozens of clients to make sure that it would work in every type of industry you can imagine, how to do the exact same thing. I know it sounds too good to be true, but stay with me. I promise you that I'll show you exactly how we do it. Are you ready? Awesome. So why should you be podcasting? I'm biased. I'm the author of the new book, Podcast Marketing Magic, where the world's top podcasters share their secrets. I am also, I hope you subscribe to Direct Response Marketing, my top 3 top iTunes rated podcast. If you go into the podcast app and search either Seth Green, make sure you put the E on the end, otherwise you'll get the actor, or search for Direct Response Marketing. I will show up all over the place. Why should you be podcasting now? Why should you care about this now? What I am showing you is Apple's iPlay. That's what it's called. It's called iPlay, and it's going in your car. The next generation of cars that you buy, Apple has a deal with every car manufacturer, all of them. So this is huge business. This is what your interface is going to look like on your screen in the next car that you buy. And you'll notice that little purple app, that is the podcast app. You won't be able to delete it. You won't be able to get rid of it. So even if you don't have an iPhone, you will now have an iCar. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute while I tell you that right now there are over 1 billion people subscribed to podcasts, and it's not in their car. When you put it in their car, more people will have access to it. Only 25% of the world's population is online right now. That's crazy. In 5 years, in 2020, it's going to triple. 75% of the world's population will be online, and they will be online through smartphones. They won't be online through desktops or laptops. And the 2 most used apps on your phone, other than, let's say, Facebook, other than the social media apps, are the Apple Podcast app and the Amazon app. So you need a podcast and you need a book, because there are going to be a couple billion people looking for you. And if that's not where you show up, they're not going to find you. That's why the time is now, whether you take advantage of this, and this is going to be content packed. Don't worry, there's no giant pitch at the end. I don't have 27 stack slides of the 8,000 pages of bonuses I'm going to give you. None of that. This is all content. All right, so before I dive right in, who am I and why should you listen to me? In case you don't already know, I have written, 6 books now. Financial Advisor Marketing Magic, Real Estate Marketing Magic, Cutting Edge Marketing Magic, Online Marketing Magic, The Facebook Ninja, and of course, the newest one, Podcast Marketing Magic. I've appeared in real media like CBS, Money Watch, CNN, NBC, Wall Street Journal, all sorts of LA Times, Boston Globe, Miami Herald, all sorts of amazing places. That is, of course, me with Dan Kennedy, my marketing coach, who I learned everything and continue to learn everything from. However, I didn't start out as a marketing expert. I went to Syracuse University for my undergraduate education, and I went for acting. My life goal at the time when I was 18 was I was going to be a Broadway star. Didn't quite do that. So what happened was my senior year, 2 of my friends and I decided to produce a musical called The Mystery of Edwin Drood by Charles Dickens. It's an interactive murder mystery. The audience votes as to who the killer is, and then there's 20 different, because there's 20 possible killers, there's 20 different songs, versions of the last song and the last scene, depending on who the killer is. So we formed a student organization. We went to the student government. We said, hey, here's our proposal. Here's how much money we need. They said, okay, no problem. Go do your show, which was awesome. Except about 6 weeks before opening night, it didn't happen. We got a phone call from the student government saying we need to talk. And that's never a good line to hear. We need to talk is never good if you hear it from your boyfriend. It's never good if you hear it from your husband or your wife. Just not good. So we went in and they said, we're sorry, we made a mistake. You're a first-time student organization. Our bylaws prohibit giving you so much money. We need half the money back. I said, you can't have it back. We're 6 weeks from opening night. Like, we're already using it. And they said, well, we need half back. So we're going to impound half the funds from your bank account. And I said, well, I either close the show and tell everybody's parents to cancel their plane tickets from seeing it, and we all end really disappointed, or I find a way to raise the money. So just like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, when his admiral says, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash, my ego wrote a check. I said, hey guys, I got all these pre-approved credit cards in the mail at my apartment. Why don't I just fill them out, charge the budget for the show that we're missing, and then we'll sell tickets, and whatever money we don't make back from tickets at the end, like, we'll split, you guys will get credit cards and we'll split the debt 3 ways. And my friend said, okay, sure, no problem. So we did it. And then I didn't know anything about marketing then. Remember, I was a theater major, so I did not sell too many tickets. So graduation came and I said, hey guys, you got to get credit cards. You got to split this with me. And they both went to their parents and asked for permission. And their parents said, no way, which is what my parents would have said if I had asked them before I did it, which is why I didn't ask them, because I didn't want to hear them say no. And so I was left with the bill. And try as I did for the first year, I could not pay it. The payments were more than a lot of my income at the time. So I eventually had to go Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which was what at the time, what I thought was one of the worst days of my life. When the bankruptcy trustee said, you spent how much on your credit cards? On what? And you got nothing to show for it. So I was not too happy about that. But I decided that because I had borrowed money to gamble on something I knew nothing about, that a good career choice for me should be being a financial advisor. So I could tell other people not to do that, not to make that mistake. So then this is Giovanni Ribisi in the movie Boiler Room, which if you haven't watched, I highly suggest it. And incidentally, the character he plays, his name is Seth. And that's what I did, except it was legal. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and I made 300 cold calls a day, interrupting strangers, asking them for money. And if you've ever cold called for a living, you know it kind of sucks. However, in my spare time, I am a professional magician, hence the magic title of all of my books. And I was reading a trade journal for magicians. Yes, magicians have trade journals too. And there was a full-page ad for a marketing course for magicians. And I took it. I didn't have the money at the time. I went and got my parents to buy the course for my birthday. I implemented the course. I doubled my prices to become the most expensive magician in my area. I didn't learn any more tricks. I just became a better marketer. And I became the busiest, most expensive magician in Western New York. So I used my consulting certificate with Dave D, who you may know, the guy who created the course. And I said, Dave, would this work in my real job as a financial planner? He said, yes. I said, fantastic. Where did you learn it? He said, Dan Kennedy. So I plunged headfirst into the world of Dan Kennedy. I eventually got to do a consultation with Dan, where Dan said, you're making 300 cold calls a day, interrupting strangers. You're doing everything wrong. Even though that's what your branch manager and your industry are teaching you, he said that you're doing everything wrong. You should not be doing that at all. It's horrible positioning and a waste of your time and money. Write me a really big check and I'll change your life. His pitch was a lot better than that, but just to give you the idea. So at the time, I went home and I said to my wife, because a little time had passed since I first became a financial advisor, and I said, honey, in the last 12 months ago, we got married. 9 months ago, we bought our first house. 3 months ago, we had our first baby. And a couple weeks ago, you quit your job to become a stay-at-home mom to our firstborn child and making me the sole breadwinner for our family while cold calling 300 dials a day. I need to go borrow more money than our mortgage to go hire this guy, Dan. And she said, absolutely not. She said, didn't work out last time you told me about where you borrowed money on a business idea. So why don't we skip it? And for 30 days in a row, I came home every day and said, honey, I want to go borrow the money to hire this guy, Dan. And she said, no. On day 31, she said, you better pray this works. So I hired Dan. When I hired Dan, there were 6,700 financial advisors at AG Edwards. I was 6,699th. I was one up from the bottom. After working with Dan for 2 years, I was in the top 30 in the country. And I was competing against guys who had been building client bases twice as long as I had been alive. So it worked really, really well. Quadrupled my revenue in the first 2 years alone. And I went to Dan and I said, all right, Dan, it's been 2 years, working absolutely incredible. Can't thank you enough. What do I do now? And he said, you should start a marketing company that helps other people do that. So Market Domination was born. It started just me and one client, and soon exploded to a office building full of wonderful people and clients around the world, everyone from individual business owners and solopreneurs to authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, information marketers, and Fortune 500 companies. So it's been an absolute incredible journey along the way. I've written 6 books, which we talked about. And let's get to the meat. Let's talk about why podcasting is your freedom. Because what if you never had to worry about where your next prospect was coming from? What if you never had to worry about the latest shiny new website object, traffic generating plugin, social media network, whatever that comes along every week that's supposed to be the next greatest thing to make you $1 million overnight? What if you didn't have to worry about where your next check was coming from? That's freedom, right? That's what this can do for you. So many people are facing, in your shoes, are facing the same challenges. So many people have that same issue, and they're wondering, how do I get more referrals? How do I get more people to promote my business? How do I get more people to talk about me? How do I grow my business that way? Well, here, this is your first writer downer. I want to make sure you're taking notes. So if you take away one thing, iTunes is not a social network. iTunes is a media platform. iTunes is a media platform. And once you have an account, once you have a podcast, you have a media platform, which means you are now a reporter, which means you have the ability to grant what everybody wants, exposure. Think about it. If you tried to cold call, trust me, I've done it. It doesn't work. But if you tried to cold call a business and say, hey, I want to talk to you about selling you something, and you're trying to get to the CEO or the founder or whoever it is, if you sell business to business, does that work? Probably not. If you're calling business to consumer like I did, and you're calling on people, say, hey, I want to talk to you about your investing, does that work? No, it really doesn't. You get hung up on a lot. But if I'm calling that business owner and saying, hey, I have a media appearance opportunity for you. Well, first of all, you don't have to call them anymore because they'll chase you if you do it right. So let's talk about how you do it. So let's say you don't know how to podcast. Guess what? You don't need to. All you have to know how to do is dial a phone and hit the record button. That's it. Gary Okino, one of our clients, didn't know how to podcast either. None of our clients, I don't think, have started out with a podcast before they hired us. So his podcast is the Outdoor Boardroom, where he interviews large company CEOs who golf, because his ideal prospect is a very affluent CEO who can afford to fly Gary all over the country to give him golf lessons. So the funny thing is that local CEO probably belongs to a golf club, a country club where there is a golf pro, but the expert's always from out of town, right? If I was in Buffalo and you were in Buffalo, I'm not perceived as high of an expert as in you're in New York and I'm in LA. The expert's always from out of town. And the country club golf pro has no marketing. The country club feeds him all his clients. So he has nothing like Gary's #1 best-selling book on Amazon about golf. He doesn't have Gary's website, if he even has one at all. He doesn't have Gary's podcast and Gary's book. So when we reach out for Gary to large company CEOs and say media to their PR departments and say media appearance for your CEO, they jump. They say, yes, Mr. Chambers would love to be interviewed for Mr. Okino's book and podcast. That would be great. And poof, he's in the door. And you can be too. It doesn't matter if you don't have time to podcast, because you don't need to be Tim Ferriss. You don't need to be Gary Vaynerchuk, two famous authors and podcasters if you don't know who they are, and marketers. You don't need millions and millions of followers. A podcast, the way we teach you to do it, the way I'm going to tell you, takes 15 to 30 minutes a week. That's it. You can't tell me you can't find half an hour a week. I had the Podcast Marketing Magic book. I interviewed 20 of the top podcasters. I did all of those interviews in 1 week. I worked a whole lot of extra. It was 10 hours and I had a book. That was it. So you can totally do this. And the cool thing, what I learned was 90-something% of all podcasters are monetizing the same way. They're trying to build up their audience big enough so that they can sell advertisements and sponsorships on their podcast. And that's great if you're like a national business and you're going to grow that audience and you've got time to wait for that to happen. But I said, that doesn't do my local business any good. My local dentist is never going to have 500,000 downloads. He may never even reach 5,000 listeners. So he's not going to sell any ads on his podcast. I need a way for him to make money right away. So he doesn't have to wait for 6 months to build up his following. I need a way for him to make money from like his very first podcast without advertising. And that's what I came up with, and that's what I'm going to show you here. Bigger reason why I'm doing this is my wonderful family. That's my amazing wife, Rebecca. Max is the 8-year-old boy in the picture. Ella is the 6-year-old girl on the left. Lily is the 3-year-old on the right. I also do this because I'm a huge believer in Ayn Rand's philosophies, thanks to Dan Kennedy. And I know that entrepreneurs are the ones who are going to save the world, not the politicians and not the people looking for a handout. It's only entrepreneurs who are going to do it. So I give money to third world entrepreneurs to start or grow their businesses to get them out of poverty. So I hope you'll help join me on that journey. These are just a few. I can't fit them all on 10 slides. I've helped so many. The funny thing is I have marketing clients whose credit cards don't go through or who flake out on us or whatever, or the checks bound. I've had checks bounce. These third world entrepreneurs that I've been helping for the last 8 years, no one has ever missed a loan payment. It's absolutely amazing. All right, so let's get into how to make your podcast marketing magical. So again, the most common myths I hear: don't know how to podcast, don't have the time, don't know how to get the right guests. Listen, I didn't know how to get the right guests either when I started. But look at some of the amazing people I've gotten to interview and that you can interview too once you've got a podcast. Garrett White of Wake Up Warrior, Roland Frazier of Digital Marketer, Sally Hogshead of Fascinate, Carl Krumenacher of Wellness.com, John Benson, inventor of the video sales letter. So I didn't get these people because I was a marketing guru. I got them before. I got them because I had a podcast. That's it. You say those magic words, I'd like to interview you on my podcast. You'd be amazing, the doors that are open to you. Dan Kennedy has done my podcast. Tons of people, go listen to it. Tons of people have done it. So I'm going to give you the steps to successful podcasting, and you want to write these down. You need to have a podcast concept and name. I'm going to talk about how to do that. You need interview questions because your podcast needs to be, in order for our model to work for you, you've got to do an interview. You can't just talk to the air for 20 minutes because think about it. If you're the only one on your show, who else is going to promote it but you? Nobody. But if other people are on your show, are they going to promote the fact that they were on your show when your book comes out? That's the transcription of your podcast episodes. Are they going to promote that you were in your book? Of course they are. That's the secret sauce. Strategically placed guests who have the most potential and the most reach to promote your business. You're basically going to, by having a podcast and turning it into a book, and by doing both of those things, your new referral team is going to promote you twice, once for the show, once for the book, thus creating a little army of unpaid affiliates of people out there happy to spread your message because you're exposing them. You're bringing credibility to them. Do you see how that works? Then you're going to need to book your first guest. So let's go. I'm going to go through all the steps, and there's more steps coming. Okay, so in order to come up with your podcast name, the first thing you want to do is search iTunes for the most successful podcast in your niche. And if you can, you might, if it makes sense for your business, then you would name yours something similar. Don't infringe on anybody's copyrights, but you could name yours something similar. And I'm going to show you examples in a minute. You can also do free research in Google Keyword Planner in what is the #1 keyword you want to rank for. I'm going to give you a couple examples right now. So we have a client in the personal branding space. So I search in iTunes for personal branding, and the #1 ranked podcast for personal branding, that the #1 is going to be top left. This is your first one, and that's called Life is a Marathon. Now, interesting thing about Mr. Bruce Van Horn is his podcast name is really long. Why would he do that? Because each one of these are keywords he wants to rank for in iTunes. Notice personal branding is right there. You'll also notice in his name, he didn't just put Bruce Van Horn. He also listed more keywords. In his description of his podcast, it lists more keywords. In the descriptions of every episode, you can't read them in the slide, but if you go to Bruce's web, if you go to the podcast, there's more keywords. So if you, the iTunes formula for SEO in the iTunes store that we are aware of is podcast title, author title, description, episodes, and good cover art and reviews. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 factors affect where your podcast ranks. So if I go to Bruce, I see that he's got, again, his podcast reviews are 1 or 2 sentences. Nobody's writing 6 paragraphs. Nobody's writing Ben-Hur. Nobody's writing 10 pages. It's just a sentence or 2. That's all you need. If I go to Google Keyword Planner and type in personal branding, you'll see I get a whole bunch. And how many searches are a whole bunch of groups. So in this case, building your personal brand gets 1,350 searches a month, and the competition is relatively low. So the name of our client's first book was Own Your Personal Brand. And we're doing her podcast right now and her next book. And here's the tricky part. Here's the secret sauce. She is interviewing VPs of HR at large companies because she will put them on the show. They will show her off. They will promote that they were on the show. She will put them in the book. They will promote that they're in the book. They might just buy a couple hundred copies of that book at cost from her to give to all the employees of their companies because they're in the book. And then Molly now has a relationship with them where she can say, hey, we put you in the show. We put you on the book. You mentioned X, Y, and Z was an issue for your company. Can we set up a call to talk about that? And boom, it's not a cold call. It's not a sales call. She has made them look good twice. They love her for it. They are happy to discuss her abilities and how they can work in their business. All right, your introduction for your podcast. It should sound like a radio show. So you need the first 2 minutes or whatever are the introduction to your show, just like if it was on the radio. Because if you don't know what a podcast is, I apologize, I shouldn't assume that. It's basically a radio show on your phone without the cost or expensive equipment needed of traditional radio. So your introduction should be a lead generation ad for your podcast and for the next action you want them to take. And it should also position you as the expert in your niche. So mine says, hey, welcome to the Direct Response Marketing Magic Podcast. Positions me as an expert. Seth Green is a 5-time best-selling author, nationally recognized direct response marketing expert. Lead generation ad right here to get free access to his magical marketing video series. Go to ultimatemarketingmagician.com. Then it teases the podcast and says, hey, on the podcast, I'm going to bring together some of the most cutting-edge thought leaders in the world to share how they grow their businesses, and you can too. That's an intro. Just fill in the blanks. How you're going to do a podcast without any expensive equipment is you're going to get an app, a free app in the App Store called Call Recorder. Call Recorder will let you record a phone call and then export out an MP3 file of the audio. You then get that recording, that introduction that we just talked about recorded. So it's got music and a professional voiceover artist doing it. So it sounds good and not you doing it. And you're going to splice them together and that's your show. So if I go in the App Store and I search for Call Recorder, ta-da, here is, it looks just like this, Call Recorder, free, record phone calls. The app itself is free. You are going to pay for the recording time, the minutes of recording time. So you might spend $10 in a month doing all your interviews, probably a whole lot less. But that's all you got to do. You get the Call Recorder app. After I've bought time, airtime to record my interview, this is what it looks like. I hit that red button. It then dials the phone. It says call recording has started. I hit this little button that says add contact. I add the person I want to interview, and then it calls them. And then when I say, hey, are you ready? And they say yes, I hit merge calls. It is now recording, and poof, at the end of it, I hang up and I'm done. And now there is my MP3 file. That's it. You don't need a fancy microphone. You don't need any paid apps. You don't need anything. So there, I added the person. Where are you going to go to get your podcast intro professionally done? If we're not doing it for you, go to Fiverr, Fiverr.com, and type in podcast intro. And hundreds of people who will come up who will do your podcast intro for $5. Now, if you want music and stuff, depending on the person, it might cost you $15, but again, it's still dirt cheap. And you'll pick a different person. Do I want a male voice? Do I want a female voice? Do I want someone with a British accent? Do I want someone with a Southern accent? Do I want someone who's white? Do I want someone who's African American? Do I want someone who's Korean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So you will search through, you'll pick somebody, they'll give you an MP3 file of your intro for you to approve. Once you approve it, then you just put it on the front end of your recording from Call Recorder and merge, cut and paste them together, and that is your show. You can do it with a free app called Audacity, which is a free audio editor. And if you can cut and paste a Word doc, you can cut and paste an audio show. And you now have the first episode of your show. Do you see how easy this is? Do you see the technology is not really a hurdle? Time is not really a hurdle because it only takes 15 to 30 minutes a week. Awesome. But you need a place to put your podcast to get it to iTunes. The company we're going to recommend is Libsyn. Lisbon.com. We are not affiliates. We do not get paid for recommending them. You're going to upload your episode. It's going to give you a URL. You're going to paste that into iTunes, and there are instructions on Lisbon right there telling you how to do it. iTunes will approve your podcast and give you a link in the iTunes store showing where your podcast is, and now you have a podcast. You're going to do that over and over and over again until you have enough for a book. And how you're going to get your book is you're going to transcribe your interviews and edit the interview transcriptions, and that's your book. So you got a book, you got a podcast, and each time you air an episode, you're going to tell your guest, hey, your episode is going to be live here. Here's what you should, here's a Facebook post for you. Here's a tweet for you. Here's a LinkedIn status update for you. Here's all this great stuff for you that you can use to promote that you were on my show. And they will say, of course, I'd be happy to. And then when the book comes out, you're going to send them a physical copy and say, hey, do you want to bury this in your basement and never tell anyone you're in a book? Or do you want to shout it from the rooftops? All right, you're going to phrase it better than that. But hey, if you want to buy copies for your clients and patients or customers, I'll sell them to your cost. We're not making any money on the book. And they'll say, great, I'll take 200. And when they hand out that book to everyone, whose name is and picture are on the cover, who's got multiple chapters in the book all about them promoting their business and their services? You do. So you just got those people to hand out your business card, in essence, endorsing you, a referral without having to ask. And now you've got an army. If it takes 20 episodes for a book, you've got 20 people out there promoting your cause, promoting your business. And this works in every industry, some of which you can't even imagine. Let's say you're a dentist. You're a pediatric dentist and you want more kids as patients, more families. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to interview? Pediatricians. So if you interview 20 pediatricians and they're all handing out the book to all of their moms of all their kid patients, are some of those moms going to be in the market for a pediatric dentist? Are some going to be going to regular dentists and didn't know there were people who specialize in kids? Are some of those going to come your way? And is that pediatrician going to stack the books in their magazine rack in their lobby and hand them out to every new patient? You bet they are, constantly promoting you. Do you see how this is totally different from just asking people to hand out your business card or almost any other type of marketing? And you see how this is totally different. It doesn't matter how many listeners your podcast has. Nobody asks. Most business owners, to them, a podcast is totally new. Most regular people, podcast totally new. Because there are a billion people on listening to podcasts, but it's totally new. So nobody's ever asked, very few people have asked me, except other podcasters, how many listeners you got. They say, sure, I'd love to be on a podcast. And in the local market, no one's going to ask or care. The pediatrician isn't going to go, well, I can only do the interview if you have 50,000 listeners. Of course he's not. He's going to say, I would love to. He doesn't even necessarily know what a podcast is. He's going to jump. And poof, you're off to the races. You start monetizing right away, from everybody promoting your show to their audience, everybody promoting your book to their audience. And that person may end up doing business with you. We've done business with a whole lot of our guests, but we obviously don't ask for it on the interview, and we don't ask for it right away. We build a relationship first. But you would be amazed at how well this works. So are you going to be our next podcasting success? Like I said, there's no pitch here. But I hope you do. I hope this inspires you to go podcast, to start a podcast. Again, it costs next to nothing. You could start it tomorrow. It doesn't take much time. And you cannot tell me another marketing campaign that in half an hour a week could generate that kind of results. If I had found it already, I would have told you. So if all podcasting did for you was get you in front of your dream referral sources and prospects, would it be worth it? If all it did was get your next book, or your first book, if you haven't written one, done without you having to write it, would it be worth it? Of course it would. If all it did was get you new customers, clients, and patients every month, would it be worth it? Of course it is. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A in a minute. I've given you enough information. Hopefully I know I fire hose you with content. That's why we're recording this, so you can watch it more than once. You can slow it down. I hope I've inspired you to do a podcast and turn it into a book if you're not doing that already. If you want, you should know, if you want to do it yourself, you are more than welcome to. If you want to apply to see if we will do it for you, I'll show you how to get that in a minute. But first, can you do it? Can you podcast? Well, can you dial a phone? Can you read? Can you edit a Word document? I'm being facetious, obviously, because I know you can dial a phone. I know you can read, and I know you can edit a Word document. So guess what? You can podcast. So if you want to apply to see if you qualify to have us do all the work for you, if you go to podcastmarketingmagic.com/apply, there's an application. You're not committing to anything except seeing if you qualify for a strategy session with me to talk about how this would work in your business, and if you qualify, and to see if you qualify to have us do it for you. We turn away about 70%, 72% of the people who come to us, because I can't have competing podcasts or competing clients in the same niche in the same area. So for example, if I'm representing the dentist across the street from my office here in Williamsville, which is a suburb of Buffalo, I can't take on another dentist in Buffalo. It just wouldn't be fair. They'd be competing against each other. So you've got to not be in a market we're in an area we're in, and we've got to want to work with you. We've got to want to be excited about your project. So again, to apply, go to podcastmarketingmagic.com/apply. And I will go ahead, and you can raise your hand, type a question in the chat box, and I will answer it. You can ask me questions about how this would work in your business. We can play. Okay, got our first one. I am a chiropractor. How would this work for me? Who would I interview? Okay, yep, we've done it for chiropractors, so that absolutely we've got a large presence in that niche, so we're going to want to make sure we're not in the market you're in. However, how that would work for you, where are your referral sources coming from? Who would you like to be a referral source? So it depends on the type of patients you're looking for, but you might want to interview massage therapists. You might want to interview acupuncturists. You might want to interview other quote unquote alternative health professionals who could send you OT, physical therapist people who could send you business. If you are looking for, whiplash and car accidents, you might want to interview personal injury attorneys who love to get their name out there. You might want to interview collision shops. So you see, it's really, you just got to think creatively, and it totally works. Now, obviously, if you're trying to get personal injury patients, you can't have, the EMT, the cop, or the fireman isn't going to show up on the accident scene and say, I just saved your life with the jaws of life. Here, take this book from my chiropractor. That wouldn't work. The ER doc can't hand them a book, I don't think. But the collision shop can say, as part of our new customer package, in the folder is a book. The personal injury lawyers love to give their potential clients stuff at the free consultation. They can give them the book. Does that make sense? Yes. Awesome. Do you see how this could work for you? Yes or yes? Awesome. Okay. Anybody else want to play? Okay. Shy crowd today. All right. All right. Well, I hope this has inspired you to podcast and shown you how to do it and how to turn it into a book. If you want to apply and see if it works with us, that's great. Podcastmarketingmagic.com/apply. And we hope to hear from you soon.